So Raphael Warnock is running for a seat in the U.S. State Senate, and he's really started to make a name for himself for, among other things, promoting himself as being a pro-choice pastor. Now, if you don't know who he is, he's currently the pastor of the historic Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta, which is the same church that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. pastored at, and now he's running for Senate. Now, I haven't been following his career too closely at this point, but I was able to catch a couple of clips of him defending his view that the pro-choice position is in perfect harmony with Christianity, and when I heard him, I just knew that I had to make a response to this one. So let's get right into it. If this is your first time here, go ahead and hit the sub button and meme team. You guys ready? Then let's go!
I don't know where you are on the issue, and let's dive into some issues here. I know where the Democrats as a party are on this issue, and I know where the church generally is on this issue. You as a pastor, as a minister, you're in a Democratic party that is in a very one-sided fashion pro-choice on the question of abortion. How does that square with your role as a minister, a leader of a church, a man of God?
Oh, I believe that health care is a human right. And I believe that it is something that the richest nation in the world provides for its citizens. And for me, reproductive justice is consistent with my commitment to that. I believe unequivocally in a woman's right to choose, and that the decision is something that we don't want government engaged in. But that's between her and her doctor and her minister. And I will fight for that in the United States Senate, and at the same time continue to fight that women can receive the kinds of services that they need in order to have a healthy pregnancy and healthy babies. We have a maternal death rate in this country that is exceedingly high, particularly to be the richest country in the world. Our infant mortality rate in the country and in Georgia is exceedingly high. And the death rate for black women as a result of childbirth is 3 to 4 times that of white women. And you will see me as someone who's been focused on these issues for years, really since I was 19 years old and served on the Southern Regional Task Force on Infant Mortality. I've been focused on women's health, women's choice, and reproductive justice. That is consistent with my view as a Christian minister, and I will fight for it.
Do you think it's consistent with God's view, that God endorses the millions of abortions we've had in this country since Roe v. Wade?
I think that human agency and freedom is consistent with my view as a minister.
Wow, where to start? Now, just to recap, the interview asked Warnock to give an explanation of how in the world he can justify being a Christian pastor with a pro-choice agenda. And Warnock starts his response by making the claim that healthcare is a human right. Now, notice how quickly we've already entered into political rhetoric by throwing out a catchphrase that people feel inclined to agree with. No one does this better than politicians. Politicians can make the worst of crimes sound virtuous by adding words like healthcare and rights, equality, justice, and a bunch of other words like that into their defense. I go in more depth on this tactic in another video, which I'll leave down below, but this tactic typically works in politics because they're using words as emotional smokescreens. They know that we'll be distracted by the emotional connotations behind the words and not fully understand what exactly is being said. So you'll notice when he was asked how he could be a Christian pastor while also supporting terminating pregnancies, he says it's because of healthcare, as if a woman being pregnant is in and of itself a threat to a woman's health, or if even a fraction of these pregnancies that are being terminated have something to do with protecting a woman's health. If it were really about healthcare, then healthcare would be about supporting a woman's health throughout the pregnancy, not terminating it if it doesn't provide any health risk. So what he's really doing is framing the issue as something therapeutic by using the word healthcare as a distraction from the real issue. So if he believes that healthcare is a human right, that says nothing about how he can reconcile Christianity with terminating life in the womb. And something similar could be said when he talks about reproductive justice. Now those words just sound so good and virtuous, don't they? Reproductive justice. Now, without using Google, what does that phrase mean?
Huh?
The reality is most people don't know, but the phrase sounds good to everyone. That's what we call an effective smokescreen. So when people start to applaud phrases like this, they usually do so on the basis of the emotional connotations behind the phrase, not because they immediately understand what the phrase actually means. But we haven't even got started yet. Now let's return to his main argument. So now he argues that he supports a woman's choice to terminate a pregnancy on the basis of human rights. Now at this point, it becomes obvious that either Warnock hasn't thought things through very well, or logical consistency isn't his strong suit. If the thing that's grown inside of the womb is actually a human and it's human life, then obviously Warnock can't claim to be fighting for human rights while also fighting to end the life that's grown inside of the womb against its will. That would literally be the opposite of human rights, and even the opposite of healthcare for that matter. So that won't work. But interestingly, Warnock doesn't even claim that the fetus isn't human life. But if he does believe that it is human life, then not only is he going against his own political position by fighting for human rights, but he's also going against his own biblical position as well for taking away innocent life. Even worse, he continues to brand himself as a Matthew 25 Christian.
You need look no further than Matthew 25. I'm a Matthew 25 Christian. That's what I am. As I said the other night, I'm a Matthew 25 Christian.
But in Matthew 25, Jesus is making explicit claims to those who don't care for the least of these, which refers to the most vulnerable in society. He says those people who do them harm are going to have a really bad day on Judgment Day. And who could be more vulnerable than the unborn who can't even defend themselves? But we can't take his silence as affirmation that he believes that the fetus is human life. So instead, let's just go ahead and say that he claims that the fetus is not human life, which I believe he would have to in order to claim that the biblical view is consistent with his political fight for terminating pregnancies. So if he does conclude that the fetus isn't human life, does that help his position? No, not really. The reason why is because Warnock claims to be an advocate of science. He uses science to argue for the use of the COVID vaccine, for climate change, health issues, and other things. But biologically speaking, it's a fact that the unborn are humans. Even if he rejects what the scriptures have to say, on a purely scientific level, it's a fact that from the moment of conception, a fetus has its own genetic fingerprint that's distinct from its parents, and the life in the womb is human life. But now it seems that Warnock is in a dilemma. On the one hand, if Warnock chooses to let the scriptures be the authority on his position here, then he has to reject his political views. But on the other hand, if he chooses to reject the scriptures and science based on his political views, then he needs to stop saying that his ideas are driven by his faith and stop calling himself a Matthew 25 Christian.
I'm a Matthew 25 Christian. That's what I am.
And if he takes his political views to be the authority on the matter, then he needs to stop acting as if the Bible and science are both authorities on his political views. If he chooses this direction, then he can't use science as an authority in his campaign if he does care about integrity and consistency. He says that his faith has no quarrel with science, which is technically true since science and the Bible claim that life starts at conception, but that doesn't really help his pro-choice case now, does it? Now, if he wants to throw science out of the window to support his political position, that's fine. But we bet not hear him talking about climate change or biological health or anything like that anytime soon. So ultimately, we can ask, what is Warnock's authority on the issue of life in the womb? If science isn't his authority on the matter, and if the Bible isn't his authority on the matter, then what exactly is his authority in the matter?